Today we'll be reading Unit 2, Evolution, pages 73 through 83. The Galapagos prickly pear cactus is common on the Galapagos Islands, but they do not live anywhere else on Earth. Small finches build their nests between the prickly cactus pads. Have you ever wondered about the wide variety of organisms on Earth? Even within a single species, there is much variation. In fact, on the Galapagos Islands, there are 6 different species of prickly pear cactus. Each of these species has the characteristic prickly pads, but there are differences in the overall size, pad shape, pad color, and spines, so what the needles look like or how many there are. How did all of this variation come to exist? In this unit, you will explore the effects of genetic mutation on organisms. You will also investigate how natural selection can lead to changes in populations and explain how these changes can result in new species. Turn the page. We are skipping page 74. Page 75, Unit Starter. Apply the concepts of probability. The likelihood, or probability, of being seen is greater in the dark if you wear light clothing instead of dark clothing. The same idea applies in nature with predator-prey relationships. The probability of being seen by predators can be affected by how well an animal blends in with its environment. Look at the images of rock pocket mice, a mouse species that lives in the Sonoran Desert. So we have 4 pictures. 2 pictures are of a dark mouse in the environment, and 2 pictures are of a light mouse in the environment. There are 2 different types of rock. One is light colored, one is dark colored. So, some of the rock pocket mice are dark colored, some of the rock pocket mice are light colored. Some of the rock in the Sonoran Desert is light colored, and some of the rock is volcanic, so it's dark colored, or like a blackish grayish hue. So, the question 1 asks, a mouse with dark or light fur would have a greater probability of being seen and eaten by a predator among light-colored rocks. The answer would be the dark mice because they stand out against the white background. They don't blend in as well. Therefore, in the light-colored environment, mice with dark fur have an increased or decreased probability of survival compared to the mice with light fur. Well, they have a decreased probability of survival because they're most likely to be seen, so they're most likely to be eaten against the light rock. Based on the probabilities of survival for mice with dark and light fur in the different environments, there would likely be more mice with dark or light fur in the light-colored environment and more mice with dark or light fur in the dark-colored environment. There would be more mice with light-colored fur in the light-colored environment because they blend in better. They're harder to spot by predators, so there would be more of them because they would reproduce faster. Whereas in the dark environment, you would have more dark-colored mice. Turn the page. Lesson 1, Genetic Change in Traits. The color of this jaguar is the result of a gene that controls the dark pigment in the jaguar's fur. So by the end of this lesson, you will be able to explain how changes to genes affect traits in an organism. So black panthers, which is what this would be considered, are actually usually a type of, there's really not anything called, like they're called black panthers, but technically they're actually a jaguar or a leopard that has a mutation in their gene that ends up, or has a gene, not necessarily a mutation, but they have a gene that codes for all black fur instead of having like a light yellow tan fur with black spots. So that's how we get our black panthers, that all black cat. Looking on page 77, can you explain it? How can a change to one gene cause a lobster to be blue? Only 1 in about 2 million lobsters are blue. The blue color is a result of a rare genetic mutation. So identify at least 3 other body features of these lobsters. How do you think a change to the lobster's genes could have an effect on any of these features? So you have the rare blue lobster, and you have the normal colored, which is like a brownish reddish hue. This one appears more orange in the picture. So what other things do they have? Well, they both have claws. They both have a segmented tail, which means that the tail is broken up into different parts. And they both have, and it's kind of hard, it's easier to see on this one, but this antennae, which is what protrudes from their forehead. Bugs have them, and it helps them feel their environment. So the things, what would happen if, how would genes affect those features? Well, it would determine like how big or small their claws are going to be, how long their antennae would be, and then how many body segments their tail has, like how many pieces in their tail, which would determine how long their tail is. Turn the page. Exploration 1, describing the relationship between genes and traits. Observe the students. We would observe the students in our classroom, We all share many traits, but we don't all look exactly the same. Some traits can be inherited, like eye color and face shape. Inherited traits are passed from parent to offspring by genetic material. Other traits, like language or musical tastes, are determined by our environment. However, more traits are influenced by both genetic and environmental factors. Each person has a unique combination of many traits. So the differences in eye color, face shapes, and smiles of the students in the picture is due to differences in traits. Right here. So in here they have there's different skin tones. Some have lighter or darker colored eyes. Some of them have really dark hair. Some have blonde hair. DNA is the genetic material in cells. The genetic material in organisms is DNA, which stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. It is a double-stranded molecule organized into structures called chromosomes. In organisms that reproduce sexually, which means that you have to have two parents, cells have pairs of chromosomes because you get one from one parent and one from the other parent. The offspring receive one chromosome from each of the two parents. A DNA molecule contains the information that determines the traits that an organism inherits. DNA also contains the instructions for an organism's growth and development. So question 2 asks, discuss, how might an inherited trait such as height be influenced by both genetic and environmental factors? Well, you're going to inherit one gene from one parent and one gene from the other parent to determine kind of what your max height, which you should grow to be, but based on your environment, you might actually grow taller, or usually most common, grow shorter than you actually are supposed to, based on how much food is available to you, how much space you have to grow in, etc., etc. So people who live in countries that don't have very good access to food, like third world countries, or access to clean water, aren't going to reach their full height potential typically because they don't have the necessary nutrients to help their body grow. So they're going to be shorter than they're supposed to be. So then the picture below just shows the cell and the DNA. So you have your cell, the nucleus, which is where the DNA is housed, to the chromosome. The chromosome has DNA strands. Each DNA strand has different bases that code for different genes. So genes are segments of DNA. Each strand of DNA, because remember it's a double helix, which means there's two sides. It's like a ladder that's been twisted. So each side or strand of DNA is a chain of building blocks called nucleotides. These repeating chemical units join together to form a DNA molecule. One molecule of a nucleotide is called the base. There are 4 different nucleotides in DNA which are identified by their bases, which is adenine, or A, guanine, G, cytosine, C, and thymine, T. There's another one called uracil that only exists on RNA. Where the 2 strands connect, A pairs with T on DNA, G pairs with C. These paired bases fit together like the pieces of a puzzle. So you should never see A and G can't go together, A and C can't go together, T and G can't go together, and T and C can't go together. So nucleotides line up so that the DNA backbone is like the handrail of a ladder. So like the ends are the ends of the ladder, and then the bases would make the rungs or the steps of the ladder. So you can see them combining here. So you have adenine to thymine, cytosine to guanine, and it doesn't matter where the G is or where the C is. They're always going to go together. When they don't go together, that's when you get a mutation and something is wrong in the DNA, and that can lead to problems in the organism. So combinations of alphabet letters make meaningful words. Likewise, combination of DNA base pairs make genetic words called genes. A gene is a specific segment of DNA that provides instructions for an inherited trait. Each gene has a starting point and an end point. DNA is read in one direction, just like you would read the words from left to right in a book. Genes are responsible for the inherited traits of an organism. Organisms that reproduce sexually have 2 versions of the same gene for every trait, one version from each parent. So if we would complete the DNA sequence for question 3 by adding the complementary bases, thymine is represented as red, adenine is pink, magenta pink, guanine is green, and cytosine is yellow. So it's kind of hard to see, but this is thymine, so we would have to have an adenine down here on this strand. We'd have to have guanine, another adenine, cytosine, because this is green, thymine, because that's pink, and then adenine to finish it off. Turn the page. Genes code for proteins. So a protein is an important molecule that is needed to build and repair body structures and to control processes in the body. Proteins are made up of smaller molecules called amino acids. About 20 different kinds of amino acids combine to make different proteins. A specific sequence of 3 bases on a gene codes for a specific amino acid. These sequences are called triplets. The chain of amino acids produced by a gene depends on the order of the triplets. In this way, the genes of a chromosome carry the instructions for the proteins that are made by the cells. So question 4, the diagram on the left shows the triplets for 6 amino acids. If we use the diagram to complete the then they want you to use the diagram to complete the triplet on the right-hand side. So we have, like we were talking about, the 3 bases code for 1 amino acid. That amino acid would create a chain, and that chain would make your protein. So to finish it off, and this is super tiny, so I'm not, they have Val over here, and Val on this one is the 3 bases CAA. So you would just match that over here. So that your first 3 bases on the right-hand side would be CAA. So you just match it. But we're going to skip the rest of that because it's really tiny. Once built, the amino acid chain twists and folds to form the protein's 3-dimensional or 3D shape. A protein's shape is linked to its function. For example, collagen is a protein that folds into a long fiber-like chain. It strengthens skin. That's what gives your skin flexibility. So when you press on your skin, that's why your skin bounces back and goes back to its normal shape. Other proteins, called hormones, deliver messages to cells by fitting into specific locations on target cells like a key to a lock. So question 5 asks you, some triplets code for the same amino acid. Sometimes a DNA triplet is exchanged for another one that codes for the exact same amino acid. If the function of the resulting DNA triplet, resulting protein, would the function of the resulting protein, would it be affected if you would change that amino acid for a different one that codes for the same amino acid? Like if you change the triplet to something else that codes for the same amino acid, is that going to affect the protein? And the answer is no, it will not affect it, because you're changing the 3 bases, but they make the same amino acid. And so your cell is not going to notice the difference because they make the exact same thing. So it doesn't matter that you've changed the triplet, as long as it makes the same amino acid, the protein's not going to change. If the DNA triplet codes for a different amino acid, however, then the protein would be affected because you are changing the protein structure because you added a different amino acid. And that amino acid is going to have a different function. Question 6, enzymes. So for 5 in order, the questions would be will not. You would circle will not, and then you would circle will. For question 6, enzymes are proteins that help speed up chemical reactions in the body. They often work by binding to target molecules. How do you think the sequence of amino acids in an enzyme relate to its ability to bind to a specific target molecule? So amino acids determine what the enzyme is going to look like, what shape it's going to take, and depending on the shape that your enzyme takes will determine whether or not what target molecules that enzyme will accept. So it's like it's like a lock. It's like the amino acids make a lock, and your target molecule is the key. So you need to have, if your enzyme is a specific shape, it's only going to take certain keys. And that is shown here. So this is the 3D shape of a protein. So this is a protein molecule. And then this is that enzyme and target molecule. So here's your target molecule. Here's your enzyme. They fit together like puzzle pieces or a key to a lock. And each one fits a specific enzyme. Each target molecule fits a specific enzyme. So if they don't match together, they won't go together. We are skipping page 81 because it's a lab. Turn the page. And we are also skipping page 82 because that's the same lab. So page 83, proteins affect traits. Different versions of the same gene can result in proteins with different structures and properties. Proteins do much of the chemical work inside cells, so they are largely responsible for traits. The variety in proteins results in the variety of traits we see in organisms. For example, Labrador retrievers are dogs that show a variety of coat colors. The coat will be brown or black depending on which protein is coded for in the pigment gene. When a different protein inactivates the brown or black coat pigment gene, the Labradors have yellow coats. And then in the language smarts, they are just illustrating that scientists have modified a tomato plant gene to produce the same pigments that blackberries have. So they would have the same color as blackberries, and they would have the same health benefits as blackberries. So the result is that you have purple tomatoes. And we're skipping questions 8 and 9 because it wants you to draw a diagram or a concept map that shows how protein, gene, and trait and amino acid all connect together, and then use your diagram to write a summary of the relationship between those things. So, but we're skipping that. So that is all for today. Your assignment will be on Google Classroom.